The sun had already dipped below the horizon when Jake found himself wandering the back streets of the city. His guitar case felt heavier than usual, slung over his shoulder as he trudged aimlessly, his head buzzing with the echoes of another failed audition. The neon signs of nearby bars flickered, offering false promises of success and fleeting comfort. Jake was on the brink of giving up. He spent years chasing a dream that seemed to elude him, no matter how hard he worked. His songs, once filled with passion and hope, now felt hollow like the city's empty streets. As he turned down an unfamiliar alleyway drawn by a melody only he could hear, he noticed a faint light at the end. The alley wasn't on any map he'd seen, tucked away and shrouded in mist. Standing there, framed by the haze, was an old woman. Her face was lined with age, her hair a wild silver mane, but her eyes were sharp, glinting like the moonlight on water. "You look lost," she said, her voice as soft as a rustle of leaves. Jake hesitated, a shiver running down his spine. "I suppose I am," he replied, half to himself. The woman smiled, a secretive, knowing smile. "I can answer any question you have," she said, "but be warned, answers come at a cost." Jack laughed bitterly. "Any question? Fine. Tell me, will I ever make it as a musician?" The woman's smile widened, almost pitying. She stepped closer, her eyes piercing into his. "You will find success," she said slowly, "but only when you lose what you hold most dear." Before he could ask what she meant, she turned away, fading into the shadows. The mist seemed to swallow her whole, leaving Jake alone in the alley. "Wait," he called out after her, but she was gone. Shaking his head, he left the alley, her words lingering like the final note of a song. He told himself it was just a strange encounter, a fragment of his tired mind. But as he walked home, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The next week, Jake's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered, expecting another debt collector, but it was a producer from a local label. "I heard your set at the open mic last month," the man said. "I think you got something special. I'd like to talk about a potential deal." Jake's heart raced. This was it. It was his big break. He met the producer that afternoon, playing through a few of his songs. The man nodded along, tapping his foot to the rhythm. "I like your sound," he said. "It's raw, authentic. We can work with that." Within days, Jake found himself in a studio, recording tracks he'd written in his solitude of his tiny apartment. The producer was enthusiastic, already planning his first EP release. It all happened so quickly that Jake barely had time to breathe, but something strange lingered in the back of his mind. The old woman's words haunted him. "You will find success, but only when you lose what you hold most dear." As the weeks passed, Jake's songs gained traction. He played his first small venue show to a packed crowd, their cheers echoing like a drug in his veins. But the high didn't last. He found himself struggling to write new material. The melodies that once flowed easily were gone, replaced by silence. Sitting in his apartment one night, guitar in hand, Jake realized he couldn't come up with a single new line. He strummed aimlessly, but the notes felt lifeless. The creative spark that had fueled him for years was dimming, as if it were slipping through his fingers. It hit him then, the cost the woman had warned him about. He had gained success, but at the expense of his creativity. His soul's very essence was fading. In a panic, he returned to the alleyway, his footsteps quickening as he approached the mist-shrouded corner where he had first met her. The old woman was there, waiting as if she had never left. "You again," she said, smiling as if she expected him all along. "What did you do to me?" Jake demanded. "I can't write, I can't play like I used to. I've lost it." "You asked for success," she replied calmly, "and I gave you an answer. But every answer has a price, Jake." Jake clenched his fist, his chest tight with desperation. "Then give me another answer. How do I get it back?" The old woman's eyes softened, almost sad. "Are you sure you want to know? Each question takes something from you." He nodded, too frantic to think clearly. "Tell me." "Very well," she said. "You'll find what you're looking for in the silence of your own making." Before Jake could ask what she meant, she vanished once more, leaving him alone with the echo of her words. Jake left the alleyway, the old woman's words echoing in his mind. "You'll find what you're looking for in the silence of your own making." He replayed the cryptic phrase over and over, trying to decipher its meaning, but the more he thought about it, the more elusive it became. Back at his apartment, he sat down with his guitar, determined to write. He strummed a chord, but the sound was flat, empty. The music that once flowed from him like a river was now a dry, cracked stream bed. He felt like an imposter in his own skin, holding an instrument that no longer felt like a part of him. Frustrated, he threw his guitar aside and grabbed his phone, scrolling through his social media. His latest single was gaining traction, comments from fans pouring in, praising his voice, his lyrics. They called him a genius, but the words felt hollow. They were praising a ghost, a shadow of who he once was. Desperate for answers, Jake found himself wandering back to the alleyway, night after night, each time asking the old woman another question. She was always there, waiting, her eyes glinting with a mixture of pity and amusement. "How do I get my creativity back?" he demanded one night, his voice raw with desperation. The old woman tilted her head, as if considering him. "Creativity isn't something you get back, Jake," she said. "It's something you nurture. But you've been taking shortcuts, seeking answers instead of embracing the unknown." "I need more," he insisted. "I need to know what to do." Her smile was thin, almost sad. "Every answer costs you a piece of yourself. Are you sure you want to keep paying the price?" Jake ignored her warning. He asked again and again. She answered, each response more cryptic than the last. He left the alley each time feeling emptier, like the wind had blown through his soul and carried something vital away. Days turned into weeks and Jake's success grew. His songs topped the charts, his name became known, but inside, he was hollow. He couldn't write, couldn't feel the music anymore. He was playing a role, repeating the same old songs, unable to create anything new. It was at his biggest concert yet, a packed arena filled with screaming fans, that the realization finally hit him. He stood on stage, the bright lights blinding him, the roar of the crowd like a tidal wave. He opened his mouth to sing, but the words wouldn't come. The music sounded mechanical, lifeless. He looked out at the sea of faces and saw nothing but strangers. They were cheering for a version of him that no longer existed. He had become a hollow shell, drained by the questions he had sought to answer. As the song ended, Jake dropped the mic and walked off the stage, his heart pounding with a fear he never felt before. He had lost everything that mattered. Jake found himself back in the alley, the mist swirling around him like the ghosts of the dreams he once had. The old woman was there, as always, her expression softer now, almost sympathetic. "You're back," she said quietly. I wondered how long it would take. Jake fell to his knees in front of her, tears streamed down his face. "I can't keep doing this anymore," he sobbed. "I've lost everything. I don't even know who I am without the music." The old woman knelt down, lifting his chin with a gnarled hand. "You haven't lost everything," she said gently. "You've lost the certainty you once clung to. You've lost your safety nets. But what remains, Jake, is your essence, buried deep beneath the layers of fear and doubt." He shook his head. "Then help me find it," he begged. "Tell me what to do." She sighed, her eyes filled with a sadness that went beyond words. "This is your last question," she said, "and it will cost you everything you have left. Are you sure you want to know?" Jake nodded, too broken to hesitate. "I need to know," he whispered. Her voice was barely a whisper. "To reclaim your essence, you must stop seeking answers. Let go of what you need to know. Embrace the uncertainty. The music you're searching for lies in the silence you've been trying so hard to fill." He stared at her, his mind reeling. "Let go? But that's what I've been running from all this time." "Yes," she said softly, "and that's why you lost your way. Creativity isn't found in certainty, Jake. It's found in the unknown, in the places where you're afraid to go." The old woman stepped back, fading into the mist. "This is goodbye," she said. "You won't see me again, because you no longer need me." Jake watched as she vanished, leaving him alone in the alley. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, brimming with possibilities he couldn't yet see. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling lighter than he had in months. He sat on the floor of his apartment, the early sunlight filtering through the window. He picked up his guitar, hesitating for a moment before strumming a chord. The sound was simple, pure. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. He played a few more notes, letting the music flow without forcing it. There were no lyrics, no structured melody, just the raw sound of his fingers moving along the strings. For hours he played without stopping. He didn't think, didn't try to control the process. He let the noise rise and fall like the rhythm of his own heartbeat. It wasn't like before, when he had been driven by the need to create a hit. It was something deeper, something honest. The phone rang, but he didn't answer. The emails piled up, but he ignored them. He wasn't chasing success anymore. He was chasing the joy he'd lost, the pure love of music that had once made his soul sing. Weeks passed and Jake didn't return to the stage. He played for himself, for the simple pleasure of feeling the music in his bones. He found a small park on the edge of the city, where he'd sit and play for the birds, the trees, and the occasional passerby. One day, a young woman approached him, her eyes wide with admiration. "That was beautiful," she said. "Do you have an album out?" I'd love to hear more. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile he felt in a long time. No, he replied. I'm just playing for myself these days. As she walked away, Jake looked down at his guitar, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. He realized that he wasn't empty anymore. He was full of the silence he'd embraced, the uncertainty he'd learned to welcome. He understood now that the answers he'd sought had never mattered. It was the questions, the mysteries, the unknowns that had always driven him forward. And in letting go, he found something far more valuable than success. He'd found himself.